guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. So I feel like it has been such a long time since I've sat down to film a video, so I'm excited to be back today and to be showing you my latest sewing project. I am so pleased with how this one turned out, and it was a little bit of an emotional roller coaster going through the process because I made some pretty serious mistakes along the way, but I'm really happy with how it turned out in the end, and this is what the blouse looks like. It's kind of like a Victorian inspired style, and I absolutely love it. For this project, I wanted to make something that looked like it came from Cezanne, which is one of my favorite companies, but unfortunately for me, the sleeves are usually too short on their blouses. So I wanted to make something in a similar vein. So it has this high collar with lace trimming, and then I added an Entredeux detailing here on the seam at the bodice, and I just love how it looks. It also has lace on the cuffs. And the fabric for this project came from Mood Fabrics. It's this beautiful Swiss dot cotton, which has such a nice texture to it. I'm not sure that you can really see that, but I will try to include a close-up so that it shows up on camera. And the pattern that I used for this project is the Fiber Mood Victoria blouse, which is such a lovely and simple pattern, so I would definitely recommend it. I love how the project turned out, and today I'm going to be styling this blouse with some beautiful vintage-inspired jewelry from Ana Luisa Jewelry, who are very kindly sponsoring today's video. I absolutely love Ana Luisa Jewelry. They are my favorite jewelry brand. If you've been following me for a while, you know I wear their earrings every day. I'm always wearing my Ana Luisa earrings. I love them so much. So they sent over a few new pieces, which I'm so excited to add to my collection, and I will be styling with this blouse today. One is this amazing little mother of pearl pendant necklace. It has a rose detailing on it. I just love this. I think it is so unique and beautiful. It looks really pretty with pearl earrings, and I love the length of this necklace as well. It's just such a beautiful vintage inspired piece, and one that I've already gotten so much wear out of. And then they also sent over this amazing pendant necklace, which I love so much. It's a really beautiful shape, and it has a hand holding flowers on it, which I just think is so lovely and kind of a nod to the Victorian era. So I'm excited to style this one with the blouse. I also really love the chain that this one comes on. It's a little bit unique and so beautiful. And then the final piece that I got are these little hoop earrings, which I just think are so delicate and cute. And I went for this red color for the upcoming holiday season, and I feel like these will be such a versatile pair of earrings to have in my jewelry collection. And I just love how dainty they are. I think they're super cute. Ana Luisa Jewelry is such amazing quality. I have pieces in my collection that I've had for over a year, and they still look amazing. They're in such good shape. They haven't tarnished or anything like that. So I absolutely love the quality, and I love that they have carbon neutral practices and also make their jewelry with recycled materials whenever possible, but still keep it at a really reasonable price point for the quality. And speaking of the price point, right now Ana Luisa is running their biggest sale of the year. So click the link in the description box to head over to their website and get 20% off the entire website. Great opportunity to get something for yourself or get ahead on a little bit of holiday shopping. I know you guys will love their jewelry as much as I do. It is just wonderful. So thank you again to Ana Luisa for sponsoring today's video. And let's go ahead and jump into this sewing project. So to get started with this blouse, I'm going to start by cutting out all of my pattern pieces. I'm using the Victoria blouse pattern by Fiber Mood Patterns, and this is actually where I made a pretty serious error because Fiber Mood is a European pattern company, and I forgot to check to see if seam allowances were included in the pattern, and they were not. So I ended up cutting out the entire thing without allowing for seam allowance, so that would make my resulting garment way too small. Thankfully, I had enough fabric to recut most of it, but I wasn't able to recut the sleeves, but they still ended up working out. I just used a really small seam allowance, which I'll show you guys later on. So this is my first time cutting it out here before I realized the error of my ways, but let's do a quick pattern inventory. There's the front piece and then the yoke for the front, then the two back pieces, the two sleeve pieces, the cuffs for the sleeves and a little bit of bias binding for the sleeves, the two collar pieces, and then there's also a ruffle piece, which I ended up not using. Here I am coming back the next day, realizing what I had done and recutting out the blouse. Now you can see I did have to mess up the grain line for the back of the blouse in order to fit it out of the fabric, but I don't think it messed up the overall look too much. So once I finally had everything cut out the correct size, I was ready to get started sewing. And I knew I wanted to add some special details to this project, so I decided to use some Entredeux on the front yoke seam. Entredeux is a really beautiful embroidered trim that goes between seams, and it just adds a really nice detail. So I thought I'd show you how I attach it here. So to attach the Entredeux, I'm going to start by pinning it face down to the yoke, and I am going to fold this in the center to create a nice sharp point. And then I'm just going to sew really close to the actual embroidered part of the Entredeux, and then using a straight stitch, attach this to the yoke. And after I've sewn that down, I'm going to take my scissors and trim away any of this excess fabric, and then I'll use a zigzag stitch to make sure that this raw edge is encased. So now I'm going to work with the lower part of the front of the blouse, and I'm going to start by adding 2 rows of gathering stitches to the top of the blouse between the markings on the pattern. This is just going to gather in the center. So now I'm going to press the yoke flat, making sure that the seam attaching the Entredeux is facing up, and then I'm ready to attach the lower part of the front to the yoke. So I'm going to start by pulling these gathering threads together and then placing these 2 pieces together with the right sides together. Now, instead of pinning the bottom part of the front to the yoke, I'm pinning it to the other edge of the Entredeux. Then I can just sew this together in the same way, so I'm really close to the embroidered part of the Entredeux, trimming that seam allowance and using a zigzag stitch to finish off the edge. So with this seam pressed, here's what the Entredeux looks like in the yoke seam. I think it adds such a nice detail and creates a really airy feel. So I'm just removing any of those leftover gathering threads, and then I'm ready to attach the back of the blouse to the front. So I'm going to start by pinning the shoulder seams together with the right sides together, and also pinning together the side seams with the right sides together. Then also all of these down and use my serger to finish off the edge. And while I'm at the serger, I'm also going to go ahead and run a row of serging across both of the back pieces because we will want to press that seam open later. So now I can pin up the back seam with the right sides together, making sure to leave a little gap at the top because this needs to have an opening to pull on over my head. So I'm going to pin this together and then sew this down, making sure to start below that opening. I went ahead and pressed that seam open, and I'm just going to top stitch the little slit at the top that we left open so that this stays in place. So now it's time to work on the collar, and the first thing I'm going to do here is turn up the lower edge on one of the collar pieces about 1/4 of an inch and press this down as if I'm making a little narrow hem. Now I decided to add lace trim to my collar instead of the ruffle that's included with the pattern, so I will be making that modification here. So I'm just taking this lace that I had in my fabric stash, and I'm going to pin this down against the front collar piece, which is the one that does not have the folded up lower edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin my lace in place so I can check the placement and make sure everything looks good. And I'm folding over those ends just a little bit so that I don't have a raw end sticking out at the edge of my collar. So once I'm happy with the lace placement, I'm going to go ahead and take the back of the collar and pin this to the front with the right sides together, making sure that that lace is sandwiched in between, and I'll sew through all of these layers, sewing up the short sides and then all the way around the top of the collar and then down the other short side. I'm using a really narrow seam allowance here just to reduce the bulk and making sure that I catch the lace as I'm sewing. So now I can turn the collar right side out and make sure the lace is looking really nice and neat, and I'll go ahead and press this flat. Now I'm ready to attach the collar to the blouse. So to do this, I'm going to pin the collar to the neck edge of the blouse with the right sides together, making sure that I am not pinning this to that folded edge on the collar. That is going to go towards the inside, and we want to just pin this to the front layer of the collar. I'll pin this all the way around the neck edge and then sew this down with a 1/4 inch seam allowance and a straight stitch. And with the collar attached, now I can fold the back of the collar towards the inside of the blouse and pin this down, encasing the seam allowance that we just created on the inside of the collar. Then I'll top stitch across all layers all the way around the neckline. So now I'm ready to move on to the sleeves. And the first thing to do on these sleeves is to cut a little slit in the front of the sleeve. This is going to create an opening so that it will fit over my hand before I attach the cuff together with a button or snap. So I'm cutting that little slit as it's marked on the pattern, and then I'm going to prepare a little piece of binding. So I'm taking my little piece of binding from the pattern and folding each edge towards the middle. Then I'll fold this in half so that it has no raw edges on the outside. So now I'm going to use this binding to finish the raw edge of the little slit that we just cut in the sleeve. So to do this, I'm just opening out that slit, trying to create a nice flat line here, and then I'm going to wrap the binding around the slit and pin this in place. Then I will top stitch this down close to the edge of the binding. So here's what this looks like now that it is sewn in place. You can see that it creates a nice clean finish and helps this to look really nice when it's buttoned closed. Next, it's time for the sleeve side seam. So I'm going to fold the sleeve with the right sides together and pin along the side seam and sew this in place. Now, since I was not able to recut my sleeves, I'm using the smallest seam allowances that I can, usually around 1/4 inch, a little smaller if I can, and just trying to save as much fabric as possible. So I'm sewing that side seam and using my serger to finish off the edge, and then I'm also going to go ahead and run 2 rows of gathering stitches around the cuff of the sleeve. Now, I like to remove this little plate from my sewing machine so that it's smaller and easier to work with when I am working with sleeves. It just makes things a lot more easy to deal with. I came up with a little modification for the cuffs of the sleeves, since sleeves already tend to run short on me and I was missing the seam allowance. So instead of using 1 cuff piece, I'm going to use 2. I folded under the edge on 1, and then I'm going to assemble this in the exact same way that I assembled the collar, sandwiching the lace through on the lower edge and then just sewing this around 3 sides. So now I can trim any excess threads here and lace and turn this to the right side and press it down. I really love the way the cuffs look, and using those two pieces gave me just a little bit of extra length that made the sleeve length perfect. So now I can attach the cuff to the sleeve. So I'm just going to adjust the gathering stitches on the sleeve to fit to the cuff, and I'm sewing this on in the exact same way that I sewed the collar to the neckline of the blouse. So next it was time to attach the sleeves to the blouse, and this was probably the part I was the most nervous about working, considering the missing amount of fabric on the top of the sleeve. But thankfully it worked out. It fit together really nicely, and I just made sure to match up the underarm seam and pin all the way around the armhole. Then I sewed this down using a really small seam allowance, and I did have to be really careful to kind of adjust the fabric as I went, but it ended up fitting nicely. I went ahead and used the serger to finish the edges on the armholes, and then I was ready to hem this blouse. So for the hem, I just decided to do a narrow double hem. If you had a rolled hem foot, that would work great for this. I'm just folding this under 1/4 of an inch twice and top stitching all the way around the hem. And then the last step to making this blouse was to attach all of the fastenings. So I decided to do a button and a thread loop at the neckline. And I found a nice tutorial on how to make a thread loop, so I will link to that down below because it was very helpful. And then I just decided to use snaps on the cuffs and made sure that this would fit nicely around my wrist before I attached them. Sewed all of that on by hand, and this blouse was done. I love the way this turned out. This is a piece that I've wanted to add to my wardrobe for so long, and I'm really pleased with the final product. It was so fun to add those little details like the Entredeux and the lace, and I love the texture of the Swiss dot fabric as well. So I'm really excited with how this one turned out and really happy to have it in my wardrobe. Fall is looking so beautiful here in Arkansas, so I wanted to show you guys a quick clip of a windy autumn day. I was taking some photos out by this tree and it was so pretty. So despite the sizing error with the seam allowances, I am so happy with how this blouse turned out, and I was really nervous for a few minutes, but thankfully it fits really well, and I just love the style of it. I love how this looks paired with jeans and really simple basics, jeans, a trench coat, boots, that kind of thing for an outfit. I just think it is such a fun piece to have in my wardrobe, and I really was in need of something more basic in color like this, so it's nice to have just a plain white blouse that I can pair with some different things. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing how this project came together. I just love the finished result, so I'm really happy with it. Thank you guys so much for watching and spending your time here on my channel today. I really appreciate it. If you are new around here and haven't subscribed yet, you can go ahead and do that by clicking at the red button down below if you're interested. That will let you stay tuned for my future videos. And if you would like to keep up with me outside of YouTube, TikTok and Instagram are my two favorite social medias. So both of those will be linked down below as always. And along with that, be sure to check out the link to Ana Luisa down in the description box to check out the 20% off sale. They have so many amazing pieces on the site right now, so definitely go check them out. And thank you again to Ana Luisa Jewelry for sponsoring today's video. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for hanging out here, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye.